right. Well, good morning to our morning devotions. This is Christmas week. 2 more days to Christmas. And we're just going to press on, at least for a couple of days here in First Samuel. But we're in First Samuel chapter 8. This is episode 144. I gave 1 Samuel 8, verses 7 through 18 as the portion to read this morning. And this is really a turning point chapter in Scripture. 1 Samuel 8 is where there is a change in the attitude towards leadership. Up until this time, and it, up until this time, this is the way things were supposed to work. There was God at the top, then there is a spokesman, which has been a variety of people, right? So it's God, a spokesman, Moses, Joshua, the judges, Samuel, all right? You have all these spokesmen, and they are to articulate the law. That is how it works. That's the government. So there's God, gave his law, and these spokesmen, these prophets, judges, leaders, are then to apply the law to the nation of Israel. But it all comes straight down from God. God to the who is given the law that the spokesmen then articulate to the people. And what's happening here is that chain of command that has been this way ever since there was a nation of Israel is now going to be modified, and they are going to insert another layer. And that other layer is going to be a king. And the difficulty with this king is going to have a mind of his own, and most of this chapter has to do with the liabilities of putting another layer of leadership in there, because the king will essentially come to the place where he will ignore the law, he will ignore God and place himself in the place of God, and then oppress the people. And that's what we're going to see. You should never want another layer of government, is the point, ever. You want to keep government simple. You don't want to give it another layer of authority. You don't want to give anybody any more authority by way of the way the government functions than you must. And here in America, of course, that's gone by the wayside. I mean, we have people with so little authority that push around all the time. We had governors during COVID that thought they were the king. Anyway, that's what is being warned of here all the way back in 1 Samuel chapter 8. So the first 5 verses are what I have referenced about what happened, because Samuel was not really a good dad. He was a good prophet, he was a good judge, and he and God in this passage of scripture are put in the same category. God says they've not rejected you, Samuel, but they've rejected me. And then the next verse talks about how Samuel's been rejected because the spokesman is identified with the one who gave him the words to say. Both are being rejected here. And the reason that this whole issue comes up is here in the first 5 verses, that he's getting old, and Samuel, I mean, you hate to say this, but in a similar way with Eli, has his boys functioning as judges. Now we know Eli's boys were corrupt, and so are Samuel's boys. You see, you don't like reading this stuff in the Bible, but it tells us. It says in verse 1, it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. And the name of the first was Joel, and the name of the second Abiah, and they were judges in Beersheba. And his sons walked not in his ways. You see, they did not follow the traditions of their dad, which happens all the time. You see it on TV. You know their dads held true to the word, and the boys are just really off the rails. Well, that's what's happening here. It doesn't have to be this way. There's plenty of examples in the Bible where this is not true, but for Eli and Samuel, it was. All right, the dad was sound, the boys were not. And then they even stipulate what the boys were doing, just like it stipulated what Eli's boys were doing, Hophni and Phinehas. And it says this, and it says his sons walked not in his ways, and here it is. He lists, but turned aside after lucre. That is, they just did it for the money. This all ties together. They were in the business of being a judge for money, and it ties in here with what judges were supposed to do. All right, they're supposed to adjudicate things based on the law, and so he says they were after lucre. They took bribes and perverted judgment. Now all of that would go together. They were in it for the money. Whoever could give them the most money in the bribe That's the side they were going to fall on. That's what's going on here. The result of this is taking a bribe is that the innocent were prosecuted and incarcerated or condemned, and the guilty got off scot free because of the bribe. Because justice wasn't really what they were looking for. They were looking for the buck to see how much money they could make. That is Samuel's sons. And it's because of this that the elders of Israel look at his boys and say, "We can't have these guys. There's no way. You're old, and this is what we have. We're not going that back that way. Give us a king." See, that's how this all happens. If and this is a big if, it's not in the Bible, but if his boys would have been godly men, we would have had another tradition, but they weren't. All right. It says, and all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah, came to his house, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. And there it is. That is the line. Make us a king because we want to be like everybody else. Every time I read this, as many times as I read this, this is so sad. I want to be like everybody else. Our nation wants to be like everybody else. I don't want that. I do not. That. Do you want to be like somebody else, or do you want to be yourself? See, it should rub everybody the wrong way. We should not look for a commonality here. We should look for things that are exceptional. We should be an exceptional people. We should be an exceptional person, not like everything else, because everything else is like mediocre. It's vanilla. All right? They just want to be like everybody else. Right now, they stand apart from every nation because God is their head through a spokesman based on the law. No one is like this. They are an exceptional nation. The problem is they won't obey God. Now, do you think they're going to obey a king anymore? Oh, man. It just goes downhill for different reasons. But they're going to get a king. So it goes on here. But the thing displeased Samuel when he heard this. When they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord, which he's always doing. He's asking God for help because it's Samuel and the Lord, that's it. And then it says, And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people and all that they say unto thee. He says, Listen to what they have to say, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me. And there it is. That God's saying this to Samuel. They don't want me to lead them, is what God is saying. These are some horrible words. Horrible words. They want, as far as Israel as a government, which is what the law is about. It's ceremonial, it's moral, and it's civil. It governs all their lives is the law. And the law was given by God on Mount Sinai. All right, this is how God wants things to go. We need another layer in there. We need a king because we don't want to do what God says directly through a prophet or a leader. He says, For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. See, they don't want, God says, they don't want me to reign over them. If they could only remember what I've done for them, but they don't want me anymore. This is consistent all the way through the Old Testament. All the way through the Old Testament. God loves Israel because he loves them, not because they're greater or faithful. They are rebellious people from the beginning to the end. And then you read in the New Testament where the Pharisees think that that's an odd thing to say because they think that they're, as pure as the driven snow. Oh, no. Israel has always been in rebellion against their God. They're nevertheless God's chosen people. And in the end, in the eschaton in times to come, he's going to restore them in a marvelous way. But here, we're just early in the Bible. It says, and then it says in verse 8, According to all the works which thou hast done since the day I brought them out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, do they also unto thee. You see, there it is. They're doing the same thing to you because we're in this together, God. And Samuel says, now there's where I want to be. There's where I want to be. I want to be, if they're rejecting God, I want them to reject me too. I don't want God to be rejected and me be on the other side of approving. You see, Samuel is where he should be. They've rejected me, God says, and because you are my judge, you are my prophet, they've rejected you as well. And then God says this, Now therefore hearken unto their voice, howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them. So resist this, he's telling them. Listen, but resist, protest strongly, solemnly, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. I love this passage. This is the long section in verses 10 through 18 where Samuel begins to lay out what happens if you get another layer of government in there. And everybody ought to read this. As the bigger the government gets, the more oppressive it will be. It's going to be like that everywhere. It doesn't matter what government, it's the nature of government. It will be oppressive. And listen, we're at the end of the year. Everybody's getting ready for their taxes, right? You're going to pay taxes. You're going to start paying things. I mean, you've already paid taxes. You've already worked hard. This doesn't belong to the government. Plus, they take your money and they spend it on stuff that you would never spend it on. They're wasteful. Welcome to 1 Samuel 8. If you want a principle, anybody listening out there, for how to run the government and why you got to keep it small, read this passage. Read this. Because God says you got to protest against this, but tell them, show them what they're up against. And here you go. And this is why you don't do it. This is why you don't do a king. All right? Don't. Keep the government small. Stick with what it says in Romans 13. Oh, it's there's for protection and justice. There's no Department of Agriculture, Education, any of this. This is all bloated government. And the same thing's going to happen here. Listen to this. And this is ancient. He says, and he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He'll take your sons and daughters and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, for his horsemen, and some to run before his chariots. You will appoint him captains over thousands, captains over fifties, and will set them. Let me just stop there. I'm going to draft your guys. I need an army, and they're going to take your boys, whether you want to go or not. You see, already, it's not a national thing when you come to fight. I'm going to take your boys and do it because this is going to be like the law of the land. It's not the law of God. It's the law of, it's going to be my law. And I'm going to take all these guys because I need soldiers. And then there's an interesting phrase here that I think we should all say. It says, and will set them to ear his ground. Ear his ground. It is an old phrase, to ear the ground. It just means to plow. All right? And I think this is the only place you find it in the Bible right here. It says to ear his ground. You're going to ear his ground. That is, you're going to be put in the fields to grow food for the government. What happened to my growing food for myself and my neighbors? He's going to take my boys, he's going to take us, and he's going to have his own federal land, and you're going to have to work it for him. This says, keep going. This says, and to reap the harvest, not just plant, you got to reap it, and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. Then they're going to put you in armament production. Okay, that's what they're going to. You're going to have to go work in a factory now to build military equipment. You know, the great military machine we have here, the military industrial complex. Yeah, that's all the way back here. The military industrial complex is all the way back here in 1 Samuel chapter 8. Because when you get a king, he's going to have to build weapons of war, and he's going to have guys working in the factory, and he's going to have guys to drive them, and he's going to have guys that throw spears. He's going to have guys that work in his fields, plant it to plant it and to harvest it. Yeah, this is going to happen to you, dear Israelis. You like this? Oh, they're listening. Oh, they I don't know what they're thinking. It says, and then it says, he goes from there, he says, and he will take your daughters to be confectionaries. And I looked that up because I know what a confectionery is. It's like a donut, right? But the word here, the root of this, is very interesting. It has to deal with those that mix spices and perfumes. That's the root of this. And ointments, which was a big deal. There's going to be those that are going to have the responsibility for doing this because it was important for those things in those days past. So you're going to have it's going to be a perfumery, where they're going to be mixing things that smell nice and spices. Going to have ladies to do that. And it says, and to be cooks and bakers. They're going to put you in the kitchen for the government. Yeah, she's a great cook. We'll take her. We'll put her in the White House because she's a great cook. That's what's going on here. It says, and he will take your fields. And this now is just taking your stuff. Now there's taking your stuff, and then there's taxes. Because he's the king, who's going to stop him? And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards and the best of them and give them to his servants. because he's the king, and who's going to stop him? Because he has the federal government, and he has the power of the military behind him. He's going to roll in with his soldiers, which were somebody else's boys, and take your stuff. Yeah, we know this happens. All right, that's the next thing, and the next is taxing you. Not only is he just going to take it, he's going to tax you. It says, and he will take a tenth of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants. Hey, we got to pay these guys some way, and the government doesn't make anything, so we got to tax you. Take your money to pay who I have working for me. This is absolutely atrocious. This whole chapter. Can you see Samuel trying to make this case to all these elders? It's like it goes in one ear and out the other, because that's what people do. They want something, and then once they want it, they don't want to listen to the implications of actually having it. They just want it. And then you say, well, do you know why you want it? Well, we're not sure. Well, let me tell you what's going to happen if this happens. And here it is. They're going to take your stuff because he's the king and he has the power of the military to support him, and he's going to tax you. He's going to take things that belong to you because he's got to pay the guys that are working for him. It says, he will take a tenth of your seed and of your vineyards, give them to the officers and his servants. He will take your manservants, your maidservants, your goodliest young men, and your asses, and put them to his work. He's got to have somebody to work for him, so he's going to take the best of the nation and leave you with whatever's left. This is what it means to have a monarchy, a king. He will take a tenth of your sheep, and now we're back to taxing again, and ye shall be his servants. That one line would have been enough for me to say, there's no way I'm doing this. And I'm sure there's some here that said, no way. But the elders here, oh, they're all in on this. Listen, if you vote for this and you want to keep pressing on this, you are going to be made servants. You once were free men. You were free men because true liberty came from the law and from God. I mean, as long as you were doing what the law said, you were fine. I mean, everything's good. And God is looking after us. He's been looking after us. But if you do this and you put in this other layer of government, you are going to be made a servant. No, you're not free anymore. He's going to come and do with you and your property and your family whatever he well pleases. You understand that? All of Israel, do you understand this is what's going to happen? You're going to be his servants. You want to be a servant? It says this. Verse 18, and ye shall cry out in the day, because your king which ye have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Stop. You're right. We weren't thinking clearly. Servants, and then when we cry out to our king for help, he's not going to be able to do it, and God's going to say, no, you made your choice. You've rejected me. You rejected my man. You're on your own. This is really bad, isn't it? And it says, verse 19, nevertheless, what a horrible word. After all of that, nevertheless, the people refused to obey. And it wasn't just the elders here. The people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. And they said, nay, no. After all of that, yeah, that just went in one ear, out the other. No. We will have a king over us. We will have a king over us. If you're a red-blooded American, you can't take this. All right? We said we're not going to have a king over us, and here's Israel in these ancient days saying, we'll have a king over us. No. That's not going to happen. But here, they got it. It says, that we may, and this really is disturbing, that we also may be like all the nations. What a step down. And that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. Because, God can't do it. We need a king to do it for us. Oh, so sad. And Samuel heard all the words of the people and rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. So before he starts this, he gets counsel of the Lord. At the end of this, he says, this is what they said. Now, it's not like God doesn't hear this, but you see, this is where Samuel and God are, Jehovah are. They're conversing about this. And so he says, this is what they said after we made our case. We. And the Lord said to Samuel, hearken unto their voice and make them a king. Give them what they want. Oh, this is something we have to be very careful about. If you want something, you better make sure it's really what you want. Oh, they were so sure they wanted this. When God says give them what they want, and it's not what He approves of, this is just going on the wrong path. This is one of those things that's going to be entrenched in Israeli history. All right? And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, go ye every man unto his city. And that is the end of that. And then you have the direction for the first king of Israel, which is a disaster. That's Saul. All right. The second king of Israel is David, which is amazing. But here we go. From here on out with kings all the way to the end, all the way to the end, all the way to the destruction of Samaria in 722 BC by the Assyrians, and all the way to the destruction of Jerusalem by Babylon in 586 BC. All the kings. There was a few good kings in the south, and they were only corrupt kings in the north of Israel. That's all they were, just wicked men, and brought the wrath of God down on Israel. That's what we're looking at coming up here. All right? Okay, like I said, well, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Christmas on Wednesday. And the Lord bless you. And great to have everybody. If you're here this morning, just great to see everybody. And I trust that a little look into the Word, a lot of principles here, a lot of good things to learn here. That you'll just hide these things in your heart that we might not sin against Him. All right? Okay. Well, Lord bless you. We'll see you. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow. Okay?